Good morning to you, and thank you so much for finding time to be with us today. This is Good Morning Africa. My name is Miriam Ogutu, and usually on the show I take us through the headlines of the leading newspapers in the country, and then I'll bring in my panelists and we'll have a conversation reviewing and analyzing some of the news items. So we shall start with the Daily Nation. And the main headline on the Daily Nation, Ida Odinga, my ties with Rachel Ruto. Race to State House, ODM leader Raila Odinga's wife speaks to the nation on her relationship with the Deputy President William Ruto's wife and 2022 politics. Her stand on ODM nomination process, opening up about the political space for women in leadership and why she too is anxious about the former Prime Minister's pending big announcement scheduled for December 9th. All right, and then just down there, beer border prices set to rise. That is on the back story. Stage set for the final BBI showdown at Supreme Court frames. As Supreme Court frames 7 questions for the case. The story is on page 4. And now Noble Informal Settlement Upgrade Project was turned into cash cow for officials and their cronies. How? A Noble Informal Settlement. The story is on page 12. Nyanza Ruto given wish list. That is on page 6. And Raila tour raises storm. The planned meeting is causing jitters in Ukambani. The story is on page 5 of the Daily Nation. And then we turn our attention now to the Standard newspaper. And the main headline on the Standard newspaper, Raila hits back as Ruto was Kisumu. Leaders allied to ODM ask the DP to be ready for opposition benches after next year's election, even as Ruto promises region economic development through his bottom-up model should he win polls. The stories on page 5 and 6 of the Standard newspaper. Mudavadi not turning back on top seat. The story is on page 7. Children die in fire as mother hooks eggs at night. The story is on page 25. That is really sad. Why Absa Bank will pay judges 1 million Kenya shillings. The story is on page 27. Final prayers for BBI as Supreme Court sets date. A full bench of the Apex Court sets aside 3 days in January next year when the parties will present and argue their case. The story is on page 8. Unions, university dons, bangle deals. The stories on page 10 and 11 of the Standard newspaper. And then we quickly move to the Star newspaper. The main headline, slow but sure, Mudavadi's blessings, drawbacks. The story is on page 4 and 5 of the Star newspaper. Ruto to Rift Valley aspirants, our friendship won't earn you nomination. The story is on page 7. I don't know how Sudi will feel about that, but that is what the DP is telling those people who are planning, the politicians and the aspirants who are planning to vie using UDA ticket. Is saying, as you know, friendship and party politics, there's a huge difference. So you have to work and earn it just like everybody else. And just down there, children born to parents living with HIV not being tested for lack of kids. The story is on page 2. An ex-member of Parliament Ongoro's husband seeks to settle 48 million Kenya shillings case out of graft case out of court, and those crowds have no votes. That is an opinion piece by Okech Kendo on page 16 of the Star newspaper. So let's just start, I think, from the Star newspaper. Slow but sure, Mudavadi's blessings and drawbacks. But before we get into that conversation, I'd like to bring in my panelists this morning. We do have Sharon Gitonga. Sharon, good morning to you.
Thank you very much, Miriam, and a very good morning to you and to all our viewers who are, and my co-panelist, Samuel Tawish, and to all our viewers who are watching us, whether it's the morning, afternoon, or evening, across the country and across the globe at large. It is a pleasure to be part of the show. Good morning.
All right, good morning to you, Sharon, and nice to see you again this morning. You look very happy and bright and just lovely. Thank you for being with us. Samuel Tawish, a very good morning to you.
Good morning to you, Miriam Ogutu. Good morning to colleague panelist Sharon Gitonga and all our viewers watching the program in Africa and the rest of the world. My pleasure to join you on this program. Good morning, Miriam.
All right, thank you so much. Good morning, and also very nice to have you today. So let's just start with the main headline on the Star newspaper. Slow but sure, Mudavadi's blessings and drawbacks for the initiated, he's a softie, but for those who know Phantom, he's the truest representation of the brawler on the rugby pitch and gentleman off the pitch. In politics, he is a gentleman in the game of hooligans. We unmask. Mudavadi says they've done I think an interview on him there, but there's also the same story on the Standard newspaper. Mudavadi not turning back on the top seat. The story is on page 7 of the Standard newspaper. Let me just read that quickly before we get into other issues. And that tour that Ruto had in Kisumu yesterday and the reception, I'd like to hear what you have to say about it. Now, Amani National Congress will soon hold its National Delegates Conference to endorse Musalia Mudavadi as its presidential flag bearer. A parliamentary group, that is a PG meeting, yesterday agreed that after Amani Council settled on Mudavadi as its presidential candidate last year, it was time they unveiled him and gave him ample time to campaign. The meeting agreed that the party popularizes Mudavadi's presidential candidature countrywide by engaging in continuous Meet the People tours, reaching all Kenyans as the party prepares for its NDC. So they're just not looking at the backyard, they're looking at a countrywide engagement with the people of Kenya. And Mudavadi is saying, you know what, I'll go all the way to the ballot, Sharon. And I know we've been pouring a lot of water in his aspirations here.
Thank you very much, Miriam, for that question. And I don't know why I'm up to date. Not just Mudavadi, but the entire Oka team has not sensed how the stakes are very high. And as we speak, this is a 2-horse race right now. And it's high time. I've always said they should actually start, conceding defeat. When I look at Mudavadi, he has actually been there in 2013 and he lost it. What is he actually going to give us, this time that is actually going to be different? Talking about the NDC for ANC, I also do not understand how this is actually going to pan out. Given that I think last week we had the same for Ford Kenya, and apparently this actually was an illegal meeting because you understand there's actually an ongoing case in court. So when I look at all these, all these happenings, especially at the Oka team, I am, trying to look at a very confused team that is yet to understand is yet to find its course. But time is actually moving so fast and the stakes are very high. So in essence, when the stakes are high, every move counts. When I look at how Mudavadi has actually been running his campaigns, I think there's a time he was actually in Meru and he carried MPs from his own backyard. How do you carry your own weather to where you're actually going to when you're going to politicize when you're going to sell your manifesto? I mean, how is this actually going to help him, especially when you do not have leaders from that certain area to actually help in actually preaching your gospel to the larger masses and actually in the grassroots. There's actually a problem with Oka, and given that they all want to, all of them are actually presidential candidates, can they actually at least for once, let's start by them actually declaring their own presidential candidates so that we can actually take them serious. Okay. As I finalize, there's a Bible verse that talks about the parable of the 10 virgins, and it talks about the 5 virgins who are actually wise, and it talks about the five others who are actually foolish. In this case, I try and look at the 5 virgins being the 5 principles, all in Oka, and it's high time they actually get back to their senses and actually fill their lamps with oil before it is too late. And because things are actually moving in so fast, okay. If they come in too late, they are going to miss their table. And I mean, it's quite unfortunate. So for this whole Oka team, let them just be realistic with themselves. Let them fold their parties, work under their traditional ally, and this is the former Prime Minister Raila Odinga. They let them bring their synergies and exponential values. For at the end of the day, we need an inclusive and progressive country. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. It's interesting that you gave that analogy and drew references to the Bible. Of course, the 5 virgins who had oil in their lamps and they were ready and prepared to receive the groom, and the other ones did not. So by the time they went and looking for their oils, when they're back, the groom had already entered and they were locked out of that banquet. That is so interesting. Lakini uko Oka, I thought there were 4, or you've decided to just add them Jirongo, wakwe, 5 of them. I'm just joking. All right, Samuel Tawish, whatever they is saying, he will go all the way. And now he wants to start, the party will endorse him so that they give him ample time to crisscross the country and sell his manifesto. But something else that Sharon has raised there that is quite interesting, I didn't catch it the last time he was in Mount Kenya. He carried the members of parliament and politicians from his own backyard, and he did not have any aspirants from this other region and things like that. So how will that work for Mudavadi when he's seeking to have a countrywide and a national appeal? Tawish?
Actually, Miriam, to be very honest, I think Honorable Musalia Mudavadi is insincere in as far as how he's carrying out his politics and campaigns. Because I remember even in the previous meetings, they've held together alongside the other One Kenya Alliance, of course, fraternity, that is OKA. They've always insisted that they will be able to agree through consensus to agree on one of their own amongst the 4 of who is going to be the flag bearer for the One Kenya Alliance. So, but when Mudavadi comes and hints at going up to the ballot, it means like there's already a foregone conclusion that is already decided that it is him or it is nobody else. So I think this is being insincere and dishonest of him, and is going to cast doom in as far as the One Kenya Alliance formation is concerned, because how will the other principals, for example, Kalonzo Musyoka, Moses Wetangula, and other, of course, Musalia Mudavadi, how will they be able really to take this position of Musalia Mudavadi that insists is the one really to go to the up to the ballot, and regardless of what really happens, assuming maybe they agree on Moses Wetangula out of consensus, or they agree, they settle on Kalonzo Musyoka or anybody within the One Kenya Alliance formation. So how does it then, how does it leave Musalia Mudavadi, who has already taken a position that it must be him who should be in the ballot come 2022 general election? But like I've always said, Miriam, it is not very, very important that Musalia Mudavadi or any of the One Kenya Alliance is really, members is really keen on going up to the ballot, because by the end of the day, is that do they have a constituency of their own? Do they have enough gravitas? Do they have enough supporters, even from the backyard, from where they come from? Do they command a sizable majority that can quite propel them to the presidency, or even mount a very serious presidential campaign that can challenge what we already see as a two-horse race that is led by Raila Amolo Odinga and Deputy President William Ruto? In my own estimation, Miriam, I do not think so. And the One Kenya Alliance leaders should just get to sit down and settle on either supporting Raila Amolo Odinga or supporting William Samoei Ruto. It may not necessarily be supporting, but I think what I'm trying to say here is that they can settle down and see how they're going to work together, regardless whether it's going to be Musalia Mudavadi to be endorsed as a presidential candidate in any of the formation, the serious formation that everybody, it's even in the public domain, that it's the Raila Amolo Odinga and Deputy President William Ruto who are leading a very serious presidential campaign. But anyone outside that formation, Miriam, I don't think that they can really threaten and upset the status quo that is already there.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you so much. So from what we've been seeing happening, and we knew the One Kenya Alliance promised that they will unveil the presidential candidate in October. That failed, so they gave it another 8 weeks, so towards the end of the year, the end of December there. So from what we're seeing, Mudavadi is insisting, I'll go all the way. Kalonzo Musyoka as well. And the other day we saw Ford Kenya giving Wetangula, endorsing his presidential candidature for next year's election through Ford Kenya. And we saw Gideon Moyo also do the same in Kanu. So everybody seems to be, running their race, but also they really are trying so hard to convince us that they're still working together and they're still consulting within each other so that they're able to come with one presidential candidate. Can we be guaranteed? I don't want to say I can always guarantee, can almost guarantee, but from what we've been seeing, I mean, they should just, what should they do? Are we likely to see a presidential candidate under OKA next year, end of December? Sharon?
It's really very unlikely, Miriam, because you remember even Kalonzo Musyoka, he's been blowing hot and cold. At some point, hinting at being available really to pursue any alliance talks with the people outside his Wiper Democratic Party, as well as outside the One Kenya Alliance. You've heard him during the interview with one of the local televisions. You've heard him during his events around the country that is willing really to talk with any of the politicians or formations who are like-minded, who are spearheading talks that can lead to a serious presidential bid. So these are people who are not honest, people who are not quite sure as to what exactly they want, Miriam.
Okay, so are they taking us for a ride, or is it a guesswork? What are they doing? What exactly is the end game for the OKA leaders?
Yeah, Miriam, when we talk about when we talk about financial muscle and political acumen and the popularity, that in itself is a very vital component in ensuring that you actually win the hearts of the people. That aside, they cannot even pull that. I'm trying to look at their manifestos. When you talk about today, I think I saw Oka saying that they're actually going to give Kenyans foreign jobs, and then I'm wondering talking about someone like Kalonzo, he was once in the ministry or Minister of Foreign Affairs. What was he able to do at that time that he's actually going to do this time? I think one thing that stood out for me, and Raila has been very consistent in saying that he's actually going to improve local manufacturing so that he can actually be able to accommodate more room for employment. Not actually someone who is talking about foreign importing our own Kenyans to get foreign jobs. You've seen the issues of Saudi Arabia. That is a whole different ball game in itself. We cannot even talk about that. So let them actually be realistic with their manifestos. I've seen Mudavadi talking about IBC and telling us that telling IBC he needs for them to actually add more money, and I'm wondering, where are we? They have actually diverged. They've actually diverged their manifestos, and they are not actually able to give us real economic solutions to our economic problems. If you talk about the main problems that you're actually looking at this time, talk about economic problems. Talk about CRB. You've seen what KRA has been doing. These are real issues that we want to hear. We want to hear incoming leaders actually giving us, a real economic solutions. Mm-hmm. Someone like Kalonzo, if he actually tells us that he's actually going to cut down, tax by 50%, and in 2 years he's actually going to have reduced the debt. Does it even make sense? So let them actually stop, taking us for a ride. Right. Let them get serious, okay, and just fold the parties and work under, and at least, the former prime minister.
All right. Yeah. So you can't really reduce the taxes significantly by 50% and still expect to pay your debt. Where are you going to get the money from unless you're planning to borrow and then pay for the other debt, which has been happening. But I would think that is not something somebody will think that will be a solution to solving the debt problem we have in the country now. Okay, so and also just another thought. When Raila was within the group, within this OKA, when they were all in NASA as principals, it was easier for them. I don't know if it was easier, but somehow they were convinced to support Raila. I think it was not such a daunting task for them. But it's interesting now that they've been left on their own because they felt that ODM was bullying them and all that, and they didn't feel like they're being treated like equal partners. And now they're within themselves, and they're unable to get somebody. So what does that say? The kind of influence perhaps and maybe leadership that Raila had when they were in this group. I think that is also something that Kenyans are now looking and seeing and drawing parallels there. Okay, prepare to accept next year's poll results. Raila allies now tell Ruto. Raila Odinga-led ODM party has claimed that Deputy President William Ruto is planning to reject the outcome of the presidential election next year. Top officials of the party yesterday said that Ruto has sensed defeat in President Uhuru Kenyatta's succession contest and was engaged in a fishing expedition to dispute results. This sounds like something Raila was saying about 5 years ago? Samuel Tawish, things have really changed.
Precisely, Miriam. It is like the chairs have been swapped, and Deputy President William Ruto is exactly at the position that Raila Odinga was a couple of years ago. And even when you look into the combative politics that William Ruto is carrying out, when you look into the accusations that is keeping on some of the civil servants, you had him the other day accusing the likes of Joe Musheru, the CS for ICT, accusing Matiang'i, CS for Interior, Eugene Wamalwa, the CS for Defense, and other public servants really for openly, according to him, campaigning for Raila Amolo Odinga's presidency or vouching for Raila Odinga's presidency. But of course, you remember what happened in the run-up to 2017 general election. There's similar, of course, misgivings and reservations that the opposition led by Raila Amolo Odinga then had on CS or public servants being involved in campaigns for of course, the incumbent or the re-election bid of President Uhuru Kenyatta and Deputy President William Ruto is the same position that William Ruto finds himself in today as we speak. In fact, when he speaks, any visitor in Kenya will be forgiven really to conclude that Deputy President William Ruto is the chief opposition leader in the country, and you wouldn't quite even imagine that he's the deputy president of the Republic of Kenya, a deputy president of the ruling party as we speak. So that is quite interesting, Miriam. And if you read the Taifa Leo headline, it is actually written that Ruto aonja machozi ya Raila. Ruto aonja machozi ya Raila. I mean, what Raila used to go through is exactly what William Ruto is going through. And they usually say what goes around comes around. And you must be very careful what you wish for the others, because it might come back to you, and you will have to really test that very pill. So when you speak, depending on how politics and the political terrain really is, always remember that there will come a time maybe when you'll be in that position, like where William Ruto is actually finding himself today. And you remember now it is the opposition really telling the deputy president, who in the political circles you will say is an incumbent who wants to continue ruling because he's the deputy president of the Republic of Kenya. So you have the opposition here led by Raila Amolo Odinga saying that one, Deputy President William Ruto should be ready and prepared really to concede defeat, because according to them, they are quite sure and 100% sure that they're going to defeat him in next year's general election. And I remember these were the same words that William Ruto used really to say more often in the run-up to 2017 mostly, general election, because then he was an incumbent trying to defend their seat, that the opposition and particularly Raila Amolo Odinga should be prepared to actually accept defeat once he's been defeated by Jubilee. So what I'm saying, Miriam, it's basically like the seats have been swapped. Where Raila was a few years ago is where Ruto is. And to some extent, where Ruto was is where Raila is. So that is it, and that has been the nature of our politics. Who knows, maybe things are going to change as we head into the final stretch, especially as we get into August next year.
Yes, between now and next year, and of course as we wait for that NDC that Jubilee has scheduled to have later on, and see the fate of the Deputy President as far as his position in Jubilee Party is concerned. I don't know if that will affect his position as the Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya, but that is subject to debate and for another time. Sharon Gitonga, same script, except that this time different actors. And it's the DP side that is saying no, and ODM is saying you must be prepared to accept the results next year.
Thank you very much, Miriam. And Tawish has said, what goes around comes back around. But there's also a very famous thing that says, what is good for the goose is actually good for the gander. And in this time, you actually realize, I think the biggest problem with our politicians is that if, something actually is legal and actually favors them, then they're actually comfortable with it. But now when it turns out that it is actually, favoring the other side, it now becomes even challengeable in court. But I think the Supreme Court has actually, when you talk about the issue of, ICT, when the Deputy President was actually trying to attack, the likes of Matiang'i and Musheru, on that case, you actually realize that I don't think there's actually a problem. And actually the Supreme Court has actually talked about that. And in this case, we've not even seen them trying to actually jeopardize. They just say they're actually supporting the handshake. And if you come to, in the real sense is that this handshake that has actually promoted the peace and tranquility that we are all enjoying right now. And as we speak, even the Ruto is actually in Kisumu. It is actually far and beyond, the spirit of the handshake. If there was no handshake, trust you me, we would actually be talking about something different. That actually Ruto can actually comfortably, go and actually sell his manifesto in Kisumu with Kisumu and all those strong backyards. I think I saw Irungu Kangata trying to challenge that and saying is that they're actually going to court. And I'm actually trying to hold my breath and see how this is actually going to pan out, because tables might turn. You understand that the deputy president is so busy trying to vigorously do campaigns and I think he's trying to violate from where I sit. I would say that he's actually violating the constitution that doesn't allow him to actually be focusing on politics and instead be focusing towards working towards the last working hand in hand with the president, especially right now. So tables might turn even as they actually take a step to go to court. Tables might turn. We might actually accuse him of the Leadership and Integrity Act for actually violating the constitution and popularizing his agenda and not working hand in hand with the president. So I think for these what I can advise the deputy president is for them to actually change their strategy. And as I finalize, I think there's a saying that says, when the only problem you have is a nail, is a hammer, you begin to see a nail as every problem. So let them not see the ODM being a problem, and let them get back to their drawing board and actually change their strategy, because there is not going to be any compromised candidate. In fact, even the former prime minister that they keep on calling a state project, he's actually out there doing vigorous campaign. Okay. So there's not going to be any compromised candidate, and there's no one with power is actually taken. Power is not given. So let them change their strategy and get back to the drawing board. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. And speaking of which, the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission Chair Wafula Chebukati is fighting an application seeking to have him jailed or barred from office for failing to give access to the computer servers in 2017 presidential election. Mr. Chebukati said the High Court has no jurisdiction to issue the orders aimed at him, sending him to jail for 6 months. The court with original jurisdiction to punish the contempt in this scenario is the Supreme Court, since it is the court that made the orders dated August 28, 2017, said Chebukati. On August 28, 2017, the Supreme Court ordered an information and communication technology officer and 2 independent IT experts appointed by the court to supervise access to the technology in the election servers to Raila Odinga and the court. In reply to a petition filed in Mombasa by Muslim for Human Rights Muhuri seeking to have him jailed, Chebukati said the orders by Supreme Court were issued against the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission and not him in person. What is that? He's a lawyer who heads Independent and Electoral and Boundaries Commission. It's him who has that institution, Samuel Tawish, but Chebukati is saying the High Court lacks the powers to jail him for contempt of court.
Well, Miriam, we've gotten to a point where each and everyone really is making an interpretation of the Constitution the way they feel and the way they think it best suits them. And this is very unfortunate. And it's not the first time that we have seen people at loggerheads, more so the legal scholars, coming out to give different versions and interpretation of what the Constitution is and what does it really say, or what meaning does it import. In this case, Miriam, I may not be an authority really to speak about the legal ramification of Chebukati's, of course, sentiments. But again, from virtue of common sense and from the basic understanding of the law, he disregarded that directive by the Supreme Court in 2017 that he should have opened the servers. And if he hasn't done that up to this particular moment, therefore he's in contempt of court and is supposed to be really charged and if necessary really be put behind the bars. Because we do not want to create a culture where individuals or even institutions in this country are going to go to disregard the court, of course, the supreme law. They're going to disregard, of course, court orders. That will be a very bad precedent, because when we do that, each and every of the ordinary people will find it as something necessary, or something that does not have any impact at all to obey court orders, Miriam. So I think Chebukati is solely responsible for this, because of course, he was the returning officer for the presidential election. He's the chair of IEBC, and he cannot really pass this blame or burden to any other person. He has to come out and try to defend himself as to why he has not been able to do this almost 5 years down the line. And that in itself also, Miriam, really cast a lot of doubt in Chebukati's capacity and ability and his preparedness really to conduct next year's general election. Some of us really opine that Chebukati is not the right person really to referee the coming general election, because already there's a word out that and there's a feeling and anxiety from a section of Kenyans that Chebukati may not quite be impartial when it comes to overseeing the coming general election. And you've also seen some, of course, the publications in some of the newspapers accusing Chebukati of double standards, that in the run-up to 2017 general election, the opposition then had raised a reservation about the participation of public servants in as far as campaigns and politicking is concerned. And Chebukati said it is no big deal, they can do that. But this time around, he's even writing to the international community, international world, really expressing his dismay and dissatisfaction as to why the section of public servants are really engaged actively in politicking in favor of Raila Amolo Odinga. So in itself, I think it paints Chebukati as a person of doublespeak, a person who is not resolute, and a person whom we cannot quite rely to deliver a free, fair, and credible election come 2022. And I think it is time. We still have about 8 months, and if it's really necessary that we must really have the election, then this election must not be done with Chebukati at the helm, because all indications are the man is going to set this country up for chaos. The man is actually displaying himself as a person who is not that impartial when it comes to overseeing this election by virtue of the sides he appears to be taking between the leading presidential candidates. So in itself, it's unfortunate. And this, I think, coupled with all those other things of disobeying court orders, it only but calls for Chebukati's eviction, one from IEBC, and thereafter will have to face the law in as far as disobeying the court order is concerned. I submit, Miriam.
Thank you. All right, so Chebukati said that no order was issued against me personally, despite the fact that I was the first respondent in the Raila Odinga case. In any event, I was never sued in my personal capacity in the case. He told Justice Hedwig Ongundi that such jurisdiction has been donated to the National Assembly by the Constitution. He said that making the application 3 years after the Supreme Court pronounced itself is targeted towards derailing and frustrating his ability to discharge his mandate, taking into consideration the preparation for the 2022 general election. So in other words, Chebukati is saying these are just mechanisms to ensure that he does not effectively prepare to head the elections next year. Now, the Supreme Court said there was no evidence to prove that Chebukati and any member of the commission played a role in the commission of illegalities. So perhaps the questions that Kenyans would want to know now is, where does the buck stop? Because IBC was indicted by, it is the one which heads the elections in this country, and the elections were found not to be free and fair, and all other grounds that necessitate an election has been done well. So IBC was indicted in that way. So if Chebukati is not responsible, and yet he is the chairperson of the IEBC. So where does the buck stop? And something else he said there, that the High Court does not have the mandate and cannot jail him because this order came from the Supreme Court. So should the Supreme Court, somebody go to the Supreme Court and file for the same case for Chebukati to go to jail for contempt, then where will that lead us? One, in terms of getting ready for next year's election, and two, just where does the buck stop, Sharon?
And thank you very much, Miriam. I think this is actually now evident enough to tell us that we're actually not ready for elections, or rather, even if we are ready for elections, it can't be under Chebukati, because he has actually been. People out here know that elections were actually bungled. Last elections, they were no free, fair, and credible elections. So he should. I think he's not any person above the law. He should actually face the law and stop trying to try to make him try to actually sanitize himself and try to look actually relevant now that we actually facing we actually are gearing towards the elections. I think IEBC has so much. And actually, under he's the one that sits at the helm of the leadership of IEBC. So, if anything, he's the one who is actually should be accountable for that. And when I look at IEBC, in general, there are so many. They have so much on their plate that they are not. They cannot even be able to consume. I think I was reading recently that 224 polling stations do not have network yet as we speak, and you understand how much network is vital, especially towards running a campaign. So you wonder, and that aside, looking at the target that they had, they were not even able to meet the target. Why? Because they actually neglected the nitty-gritties. Talk about civic education, and they had to even think about it. They have money that they're actually given every financial year, approximately 5 billion. Mm-hmm. Where does this money go? Mm-hmm. It goes in, recurrent expenditures and salaries, wages. So there's so much. And as we speak right now, I think Kenyans should just read between the lines.
But IEBC is not ready to conduct elections. Okay. All right.
They have bungled the by elections of Kiagu. So it is. Let us just read between the lines that as we speak, we are not ready for the elections, and even if we are ready for elections, not under the leadership of Chebukati. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. Let me attempt that question again to you, Samuel Tawish. Chebukati is saying the High Court does not have the mandate or powers to jail him because that case was heard at the apex court, that is the Supreme Court. So only the Supreme Court can charge him, can find him guilty of contempt. All right, so should a Kenyan one day wake up and go to the Supreme Court and say, you know what, you gave these orders, they were not followed, and what does the law say? 6 years for contempt of court orders, right? And also, Chebukati is saying, hey, I'm not responsible. I'm not the one who's supposed to be taking this blame. Fine. The elections, the Supreme Court found that the elections are not free and fair.